I am Jaclyn and welcome to the Unstoppable Leadership Spotlight podcast, where we hear from influential leaders and their game-changing insights. As I said, I am Jaclyn Strominger, your host, and today I want to welcome our amazing guest, Stephen Werner. So, Stephen, welcome. You and I met on another show or another leadership
Yeah, like
podcast
a
or
networking thing.
Zoomy network thing. Anyway, so share a little bit of background on you because when we were talking, like you've done some great things and you're doing some awesome things.
Yeah, it's a fun journey, and it's great to I've listened to a few of your podcast episodes. It's a great show. Really appreciate you having me here. My name is Steven. I help kids build profitable businesses before graduating high school, and right now that's my primary focus is just helping kids develop financial literacy, helping kids learn that entrepreneurship is an option. Whether you plan on being an entrepreneur or business owner for your entire life or not, it's always a skill that everybody should know, and to be able to know how to invest, to be able to know how to manage money properly. And so that's my like super big passion. That's my primary focus. I have about 10 years, a decade of experience working with kids, working with teens, working with families. And that's when I was and worked at an after school program, worked as a youth pastor for 5 years after that. And then the last 5 years I have spent building a business called Modern Musician, which helps musicians build profitable businesses with their music to make a living doing what they love. So my whole journey has been working with families and kids, and then 5 years of, oh, I became an entrepreneur and started doing business stuff. And I'm working with 5 or 6 different businesses now. And with Modern Musician, it was a huge learning experience for me. And it was really the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey and realizing, whoa, there's a lot of stuff that people didn't tell me when I was a kid that were possible in my life. And taking a business from working from the bottom to the top of a company, taking a business from 100,000 a year to a couple million a year was a cool experience for me. And so I've built a super cool business network of awesome people. And now I'm like going back to my passion of working with kids, working with teens, working with families, and doing whatever I can to help kids live secure, successful, and self-sufficient lives.
That is just truly amazing. I know one of the things that I love which is helping people turn their passions into profit, and that's what you're doing. So that's really
Oh
huge.
yeah.
What I There's so many things I want to talk about, but the first thing I want to actually ask you is, so on your journey, we all have our journey is our own individual journey. I'm curious is what helped you be the leader you are today in that journey?
That's a great question. What helped me become the leader I am today? And I think it's hard to think of one specific moment. If I could think of one moment when I actually realized that I was a leader for the first time, a lot of times you can be a leader and not even realize that you're a leader.
Right.
And I remember because I was a youth pastor, I worked with kids, families for 5 years. And what that meant was I got to experience the highs and lows of life. I got to experience the best part of a kid's life, of a family's life, and I got to experience the worst parts of their lives. And I remember being, gosh, I must have been 23 years old, 24 years old, and I had a parent come into my office and start asking me for parenting advice. And I'm like, I'm 23, probably 23. I'm just assuming that was the age. Like, I'm 23 years old. I just got out of college and I don't have any experience parenting. And I'm thinking, why is this person asking me for parenting advice? So I was just very transparently, I don't know the answer to your questions, but it made me realize that, wow, like I have people that are actually looking to me for leadership in a different way than I thought. Cause I think I always knew that I was somewhat of a leader. Like when I was like in class projects, I would end up taking over the project. I would like whenever I'd have some kind of like job or whatever, I would end up being in charge of things. But this was the first time I was like, whoa, like I have people looking to me for guidance in their life.
Right.
And so that was a really like almost a moment of, oh, I need to take this seriously. Like I need to take leadership seriously. I need to, and then I think that one of the things that made me realize is I don't have experience parenting, and I'm 33 now. I have a 11-month-old, so I still don't have a whole lot of experience parenting. You just got to make the baby feel happy and loved and keep
Right.
them alive. But so I didn't have experience parenting at the time, but I knew a lot of people who did have experience parenting. And so I started talking to as many people as I possibly could to learn. what does it take to be a good parent, like reading books, figuring out like how to handle certain situations with kids. And it turns out that I ended up using that for the next 5 years in my job because that was the very beginning. Like as soon as I showed up at the church, people started asking me for advice. It was
Mhm.
like just because I was put in that position, people started asking me for
Right.
advice. But it was like I actually learned a lot through teaching and through reading and through like on the job training, which is what I
Right.
think parenting basically is. You're just learning it as you go.
Totally
And
learning it as you go. As
yeah.
long as you don't
Yeah.
just,
So I think the key was that I learned that you don't have to know everything and you don't have to have experience at everything in order to help people because you can build a network of people, which is really what I'm focused on doing right now in business, is building a network of people who have massive business experience selling tens of millions or like exiting a nine-figure company. And oh, like these are the people who, like, I want to help kids become financially literate. I want to develop financial literacy in kids. I want to help kids become entrepreneurs. Then I need to be learning from the top entrepreneurs that are out there. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, it's actually, there's a lot of great things that were in there. So there's a lot of amazing, like, key nuggets. A couple things to think about that you shared. Number one is, I think as a leader, one of the biggest things so listeners, as you're hearing this, you don't have to know everything, right? And most of us don't, but then we do need to understand that we can ask. And asking is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of knowledge, of wanting to get
Mm,
more knowledge and understanding that. So it is to me a very important lesson in leadership, which is what you did, which you said is, I didn't know the answer. I was honest about it. Key, honest, right? Like you said, hey, I can't answer your question. That's being honest. And then you went out and asked and gathered information. And maybe you still don't always know the answer, but you're asking and you're learning.
mm,
And leaders, if we think about what leadership is, it's helping people, leading by example. Hey, if you don't know something, let people know about it, be honest,
mm.
and you can ask and build a network, which I think is huge. And I share this. I do a master class on networking to net worth because your network, and the more you can build it, is your net worth. And I always say I'm a billionaire because have
Yeah.
I have a
I saw
network,
that.
right?
I saw that. I saw that your network is your net worth and so what you're doing right now is networking with people on a podcast,
Right.
which is really smart. If you're wanting to build networks, it's a really smart way to do it. But I guess that's very similar to, I suppose what I learned was you don't have to know everything. You just have to know the right people.
Or, and if you don't know them, find them. Remember,
Hmm.
I think one of the biggest things that we have to remember is that every person, we're all human. We're human beings.
Hmm.
And that if we don't ask the question or we don't
Hmm.
ask, the answer is always no. So we just need to put on our big adult pants, boys or girls, and know to ask the question, right?
Whatever
Right.
kind of pants you want. Whatever kind of pants you want.
Right. Right. So knowing this, okay, so a couple things because you worked with kids and adults, right? And so,
Yeah.
as in the music business, I'm assuming you're working more with adults in their business. And then you got kids that you're helping. So those two groups, what is more rewarding for you? That's question number one. And I don't mean to stack these, but I am. What's
Yeah.
more rewarding? And who do you find out of the two groups is easier to lead?
Very interesting question and a difficult one. So the two questions are who do I find most rewarding to work with and who's easier to lead, basically. So who I find most so when I'm working with kids, when I'm working with teens, I'm really working with their family.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to separate. Am I working with kids or am I working with parents or am I working with musicians who also have kids? So for me, I think families. I think it's really about the family. And I have seen this over and over again that change, like real positive change, typically doesn't happen. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions, there are always exceptions, but generally, real positive change does not happen in a kid's life unless it also happens in the parent's life, and unless it also happens at home. So change really has to happen. It's not something that you can. When I was a youth pastor, you would think I spent most of my time working with kids and teens. I probably spent 66% of my time. I'm making up a percentage, but
Right.
basically just getting the point across that I spend more time working with parents than I did with kids, and spend more time working with my adult leaders. And I built a volunteer team of 50 people and I had volunteer leaders who were like actually in charge of things instead of me. Like they would just do it. And I had adults who would preach to the kids because talking and public speaking is not necessarily my favorite thing in the world, and it's not what I'm best at. But I had people and I could teach them how to do it. So I don't know. For me, it's like working with the kids and working with parents, working with it's to me, it's all the same thing. And when it comes to who's easier to lead, rephrase the question so I make sure I answer the right question.
So maybe it's even more coachable, but leading. It's
Sure.
almost who out of the two groups is there one that's easier to lead than another?
Yeah. So there's a more open-minded group, which is a kid,
Mhm.
always more open-minded because
Right.
when you're talking to kids, you automatically have you're an adult. So
Right.
a lot of kids just listen to you because you're an adult. But kids are also in a phase where their mindset is being shaped. Their life is being shaped. And the most formative years in a kid's life are the first 5 years. And then after that, it's like your adolescent years. And then after that, like basically the younger a kid is, the more you can influence a kid better when they're younger,
Yeah.
basically, because they're more open-minded to other things. With adults, though, I often find that adults, it's not that much different from working with kids in terms of if you're trying to lead a team, and which I led volunteer teams of high schoolers who are working with middle schoolers, and I led volunteer teams with adults. I've led corporate teams, I've led whatever. And there's actually similarities in all of them. And I think the biggest similarity, the one thing that rings true from all groups is that communication is key. And over communication is a good idea. And I don't necessarily think kids and adults are a whole lot different when it comes to people learn from repetition. And so yeah, so I guess like easier to shape a mindset in a positive way, kids, but everything else is to me is like almost exactly the same.
Yeah. No, and what you said, and it's great. And you would think that too. But key thing obviously is communication. Communication, I think no matter what we talk about, is one of the biggest
Mm,
things about leadership is that, and you shared it beautifully, is over communicate. That is, the more you communicate, the better, whether you're sharing your vision and your mission
mm,
as a company, or you're sharing what you're doing for the kids or for what people are getting
mm,
involved in.
mm-hmm,
It's about how you communicate in the words that you're using.
mm-hmm,
And that's so critical. And something else that you said that I think is really important, and you shared that the change happens if you're going to see have something change with the kid, it has to change with the parents, but it also has to change
mm,
at home.
mm-hmm,
And I would also say that in business, if you are looking to make a change within your team, your company,
mm,
we're the people that we are at home and the people that we are at work, they shouldn't be two dramatically different humans. And if we want
right.
to change something at work, we may also have to possibly change something at home.
And if you want to change something within your team, you have to change it within yourself
I think right.
first.
Yeah.
That's absolutely. It's the same concept. Nothing's going to change in a company's work environment if the leadership isn't involved. Like you can't just expect a team to make this crazy, awesome, positive change when I'm not saying that you're the parent of the people you work for, but it's a similar dynamic. It's like you have a person who's an authority figure, and then you have other people who are a part of the organization. And it's if the people who are in leadership aren't the same thing with parents. Like I have parents who would almost have the mindset of my kids having a lot of problems. They're doing XYZ in school. They're not whatever. And so can you talk to them and help them and fix this? I certainly can talk to them, but the real change needs to happen at home. The real change is like
The root.
you can't outsource parenting just like you can't outsource leadership. I suppose there are ways to outsource leadership, but not very easily.
Right, right. But what you said, I think, is really important. I sometimes look at sometimes leadership as when you're looking at when you're the CEO of the company or you're a VP of a team or you're running a team. Well, it doesn't really matter
Right.
what level you are. Doesn't really matter. Titles are whatever. Who cares?
Hmm.
But if you're the leader of that team, that I always like that team is your family, and the acronym of together everyone achieves more. And
Mm,
you're in there if you're all gonna rake leaves to clean up the yard,
yeah.
you're out there raking with everybody too,
Mm,
right? Because you're part of that team and you're part of the family. And I look at people, if we all have that family approach to the team,
yeah.
maybe we'd resonate because then you feel that you're part of something bigger when you're part of a family, like your work family. People talk about their work wives, their work husbands. You got your work brothers and sisters.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah, it's good to have a working environment that feels. I think there's certainly pros and cons, and you can take it too far. But I think having a an atmosphere of we're working together and we care about each other. Like I'm right now doing I have a so I'm working with 6 different businesses right now, all under one umbrella, and doing like a comprehensive audit review of all their processes, all their systems. Because when it comes to business, like my core strengths are building scalable systems. That's what I'm really good at. And which right now I'm starting a new thing where I'm actually the face of the company. That's slightly uncomfortable. I really like to build systems and processes. So anyway, but the one thing that I've gotten from this company that I'm working on is, or say 6 companies, is that everybody on the team, I've interviewed tons of people on the team to just get a sense of like where things are in the organization. And that has been their biggest strength, their absolute biggest strength is that people really care about each other. In a family, and you could compare it to family, you can compare it to work. In a family, I would say a healthy family is you got people who help each other. And when someone's like struggling in a certain area, there's going to be someone there to help them. And this is the exact culture of this entire organization. It's an amazing leadership in a sense of these people believe in what they're doing and they are willing to they're not going to stick in they have a job. Of course everybody has a job description, but if someone needs help with something that's not necessarily within their job description, they're going to go out of their way to still help that person, which I think is really powerful. Now the big challenge in this business is documentation, and that's why they need to help each other so much, because things aren't documented very well. So we're going to work on that. We're going to get things documented. We're going to make sure the systems are scalable,
right.
but we're not going to lose that. We got to keep that. That's an amazing culture to have with a team, is like a team that helps each other and goes above and beyond to do not just like the bare minimum.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that is beautiful. That's to me again, that's the definition of team. Together, everyone achieves more. And it's when people
I need
know,
to get more acronyms. I need to get more
yeah.
acronyms. You got these
Oh,
cool acronyms.
oh, just I can share a lot of them with you. Happy to share. So one of the things that is a lot of people talk about with leadership and what makes us stronger and better is that sometimes we have experienced some, whether it's a resistance or failure. So I'm curious, what have you experienced yourself either as a resistance or failure, and how did you transform that into a win or growth?
Yeah. Yeah, that's another great question. Resistance or failure has happened many times. I feel like the biggest lessons I've learned have always been through failure, and I'd like to get better at learning from things other than failure, which is why I'm surrounding myself with people who have made tons of mistakes already. But some of the biggest failures I would say are one, and I think these are failures that are common failures that a lot of business owners will experience, is one, not being open to, just because something has worked a certain way in the past over and over again doesn't necessarily mean that's the thing that's going to work forever. And sticking with something because it's comfortable is not always the right choice. And actually, if your only reason for sticking with something is because it's comfortable, then it's usually the wrong choice. But I would also say that I'm trying to think of how to put this. When you have an idea, it doesn't matter how great the idea is. If your team doesn't believe in the idea, will fail.
Mhm.
And so I think that a lot of times we, as business owners or as leaders, have a great idea, and it very well might be the best for the organization. It very well might also be the best for all of your clients. But just because it's a great idea doesn't mean everyone else believes it's a great idea. And if other people don't believe it's going to work, then it won't work. So an example of this is when I'll give you my first example. When I was a youth pastor and we did this. So I don't know how familiar you are with like the whole church culture or whatever, but how our church was. there was a Sunday morning, there was Sunday school. So I was in charge of leading Sunday school on Sunday morning. I was also in charge of a Wednesday night thing. And then I was also in charge of, there was like various other things that were happening in the week. But what was happening was kids would just go to Sunday school and that would be it. They'd go to Sunday school and then they'd go home. And so these kids did not even experience adult church. They did not even volunteer. They did not even help. Like they're not really serving. Like I'm not really seeing any like massive change happening in their lives. So it's like, hey, we got a Sunday morning, a Sunday night thing, and a Wednesday night thing. So I canceled Sunday morning, just canceled it. Just we're done. We're not doing this anymore. Like we're not doing this anymore. It's not actually mattering. Like what we're doing is not making a difference. What we're getting is a bunch of kids who are like church kids that come up and they're doing a little routine. And it's a meaningless, to me, it felt like a meaningless routine. There's only 15 kids that go. We've got like 150 kids in our youth group at church. This is not really making a difference. And these kids, rather than going and sit in a classroom, they should attend church with their parents and then they should volunteer like their parents are. Like that would be more beneficial for their lives. And it turns out that was the right choice. And it turns out that everyone agreed with that after we had a conversation about it, but I did it in the wrong order. It's like I just thought I could tell everybody. I
Maybe
thought I
talk
could tell
about it
everybody.
first.
Well, again, I was 23 years old, so I thought I could just tell everybody, like, hey, we're switching this, we're changing this, it's going to be way better. And I thought they're probably just going to listen. This is the right choice. And yeah, so communication. And honestly, had I just sat down and talked to the kids about it a little bit first, they probably would have come up with ideas they probably could have come up with the idea on their own. Hey, what are we doing? This is
Right.
like what we're doing up here is not really making all that much of an impact and difference. And I don't feel like you're being excluded from like the overall whole group of people
Yeah.
of the church. You're in your own little silo. And honestly, similar to teams is like teams shouldn't be just stuck in a silo doing their own thing, not communicating with the rest of the team. So it's almost a similar thing. I was like, you got to be a part of this whole thing. And so right choice, just because it's the right choice doesn't mean it might be the right choice, but you have to make sure that the team is on board. And if the team's not on board, don't do it until the team's on board.
Right.
Or if there's only two people on the team who are not on board, then you might have to get rid of some team members as you make the change. But you have to make sure the rest of your team is on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, what you just shared is so important, and I feel that as leaders, one of the biggest things that we need to do is number one, we talked a little bit about it before, it's communicate, but share the vision of what we want and ask
Mm.
questions and get people's, like what you learned was, oops, I should have got the buy-in. Or I should have asked my team. I might be the leader, but I'm not the dictator. Right.
Dictatorship is not leadership.
Right. And so a little bit of so key thing is if you have a vision and you have an idea, share it and before you put it into gospel to make it ask people's opinions because you never
Right.
know where it can expand to and get everybody's input because when you get that input then you're getting the
Mm.
buy-in and then people feel that they're part of that process and that is
Hmm.
just, it's a huge lesson to learn and I want to just thank
Mm.
you for sharing that because it was I think sometimes it's something that we forget about
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
we're the CEO of a company and we've written our vision and our mission statement and we need to it's something that we are
Mm.
constantly looking at because it's evolves it's not something that you it's
Mm.
not a write down and be done with it so I think that was
And make sure your team knows your mission.
yes
We had
right
this thing happen at where so Modern Musician. So to give you like a quick background of what I did for 5 years at Modern Musician, I started as a sales representative. Then I became a sales manager and trained other sales representatives. Then I started coaching clients. Then I started like coaching, building a team and teaching our team to coach clients. And then I'm leading our team. Then I'm like running customer support and eventually a COO and a shareholder in the company. But where were we going with that? We're talking about mission and vision. So we went through this thing where we were talking about like in our leadership, we go through every quarter and we're looking at our mission. It's right in front of us, our mission, our vision, our values, all that stuff. And then it's on our website too. Like you can go to the website, you can read
yeah
them. But then I think we had our HR manager send a survey and ask, what are the vision and values? And the amount of people who didn't know was crazy. Oh my gosh. Like we have not done a good enough job of communicating this with our team. And as it turns out, our team fully embodies our mission, our vision, and our values
Mhm.
better than I've seen in almost anywhere else. Like the full embodiment of the, so we didn't have a massive problem.
Right.
But if there was a company that didn't have a full team that fully embodied the values naturally, which most companies don't necessarily have, it's not necessarily natural to embody all the mission, the vision, the values of the entire company. You have to make sure that's, again, it goes back to over communication, making sure you're over communicating everything. And then also, even if someone buys into an idea, or even if someone says, I should say, even if someone says that they buy into an idea, a lot of it's like a very popular thing to say, don't take no for an answer. Don't take yes for an answer. Like sometimes people are just going to say yes to you because you're their boss or you're their leader. So have someone else, like that would be, I think, a key leadership principle. I don't know if it's a principle, but it's a strategy,
The insight and
is
strategy. Yep.
the insight to not be the only person who is gathering this feedback from your team. Have somebody who your team is not afraid to share everything with, even and even to the point of tell them they can share with this person and that person's not going to tell you what they said
Right.
unless there's like a massive crazy issue. Like I want it's I don't, I'm not a fan of anonymous surveys, but I think that there should be someone else asking questions, and I think as a leader I should put someone else in a position
Yeah.
that part of your job is to find out how people are feeling and to get them to say things to you that they will never say to me because they might be, regardless of, it doesn't matter how transparent, open, honest of a leader you are, there's going to be some people who won't share certain things just because of your quote unquote position of authority. And so have somebody who they can and will share with. That way you're not blindsided by, everyone said they thought this was a great idea. Okay, they said that to you because you're their boss, but
Right.
then they weren't really, they were, yeah. So have someone else that's gathering that feedback for you is huge.
That's a really great tip. And yeah, take listen to that because it is a true important strategy to be able to use because think about a family. Sometimes you might say something to your mom, but you're not going to say something to your dad.
Mm,
It happens in my house.
yeah.
So with my kid. So
So I'll experience that once I start having
yeah.
kids who can talk. Right now, she's just like clapping and dada, mama.
Right.
Oh, this is so
Yeah.
cute. She has not done anything wrong ever in her life yet. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun when we get to that age.
And it's never nothing ever. They're all lessons of learning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did it for 5 years as a youth pastor, like an extra parent. So well, I guess that's another perfect example of, I would have parents who would say, I told my kids this 10 times, and then you said it once and they believed you. Or like, I would also have parents who would talk to their kids and would say, hey, you can share stuff with Steven. I know there's gonna be stuff as a parent that, and I think parents, you should do this with your kids. You need to have non-parent adults who are having a positive influence in your kids' lives. So if you're a parent, you absolutely have to do that because your kids will not tell you everything. So make sure you surround them with other people that they feel safe to tell everything to. That way they're not navigating childhood at the advice of other middle schoolers. It's not good. It's not a
No.
good thing.
That
Yeah,
is a
have
great
other my
lesson, right?
yeah, my parents did a great job with that. I had 5 to 10 other adults who were positive influences in my life who I could talk to about things, and I'd have different ones who I'd talk to about different things.
Yeah,
But I was never navigating without the advice of an adult, except a couple times because all kids do that at
right.
least a little
Well,
bit. But
that's learning too. But no, that's such a
yeah,
great tip too, because business and companies and families that you do need to surround yourself with other people. It's
yeah,
like in your company, that's your board of directors where you can ask other people to ask
mm,
questions. And then your family, you as
mm.
a family, you have to almost provide your kids with a little mini board of directors that they don't
Yeah, they need an advisory board.
advisory board,
They
right?
absolutely
That
have
they
to.
can, go and ask to.
Exactly.
So speaking of all this, like where you are, you've got a lot of great things happening. So
Yeah.
what things are you working on now in your own leadership for your own leadership? And how are you challenging yourself to grow in that area?
Yeah, building a new business from the ground up from scratch is lots of fun. And it also shows you some of your blind spots. And for example, for myself, we all have blind spots. If you say you don't have blind spots, then you're blind to your blind spots, obviously. So I think for me, and it goes back to something we talked about earlier in the conversation, is surrounding myself with the most super genius people who are people who I trust, who are people who I believe in, who are people who have the experience and the knowledge to be able to give awesome advice and do what I'm good at, right? Like right now, I'm just focused on doing what I'm good at. I'm really good at work, even as I've been building a business for the last 5 years, and I've been volunteering, working with kids and working with families. I have a sister who's turning 18, just turned 18. And so, like, for me, I think the passion that has never left, has never gone away, has been like making a positive impact on kids, on teens, and on families. And it just so happens that I believe the best way to do that is through business. And so right now for me, it's just all about surrounding myself with the right people. I got a guy named Brian Kurtz, who is on my board of advisors. I got a guy named Jason Friedman, who's on my board of advisors. I got someone named Rachel on my board of advisors. And these are people who have done pretty dang huge things in business. I got writing my curriculum right now for the program to help kids develop financial literacy and build businesses before they graduate high school. Is it me writing the curriculum? No. I have someone writing the curriculum who's done 30 million in Amazon sales and also done 30 million in sales teaching people how to sell on Amazon. And his business partner is writing my webinar. So it's like surrounding myself with the right people who are going to be able to push me and lead me in the right direction is my absolute number one focus right now, because I think that a true leader is, it's not necessarily just about what all of your skills are as a leader. It's about, can you put together the right team? Can you get the right people around you to turn your idea into a reality, and not just a reality that is also scalable? Because I also don't want a lifestyle business. I'm not interested in a business that makes me multiple six figures a year. And that's great. Awesome. Cool. You're just pulling all the money out of your business. Like, I want to build something that can really scale and make an impact on the larger education system as a whole. And I'm not going to do that as a solopreneur. It's just not going to happen. It's just about, to me, like where I'm learning and growing and stretching myself is just like, and I'm honestly, to be completely honest, I'm not. So I'm very confident, and one of my mentors Brian Kurtz has emphasized the importance of confidence, but not arrogance,
Mhm.
and that kids need to learn the difference between confidence and arrogance. So I have a pretty high level of confidence, but I also have a very realistic view of my own experience. And I know that I have very significant experience working with kids and families. I'm an expert in that area, right? I'm very good at business operations. I'm very good at building systems at scale. And also, I don't have the amount of business experience that all of the people on my board of advisors have right now. And that's why I needed them. That's why I wanted someone else who had way more business experience writing the curriculum, because I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I know I'm good at business. I know I'm good at teaching. I know I'm good at working with kids. I know I'm good at working with families. I know I'm good at galvanizing a group of people and getting everyone on board and getting everybody excited. And also, like, where are my weak spots? I'm going to fill them with people who are way better at stuff than I am.
No,
So
that,
that's the
no,
stretch. The stretch is also being willing to ask, because it's shocking the amount of people who, if you're willing to ask and you're passionate about something and they're your friend, then like they're in my mastermind group, so it's not a crazy ask. But sometimes it's like all you got to do is ask somebody and they're in. They're ready to go. They believe in what you're doing. They're on board. So
yeah,
that's been a lot of fun, just seeing how many people jump on board with an idea that has the potential to make an impact.
that's actually really huge. Stephen, it has been such an amazing time connecting with you, talking with you, learning about your leadership. You have given us some amazing insights that listeners literally take notes and follow some of these great tips and things to do. Stephen, where can people find you on social, or what's the best way for them to reach out to you if they want to connect?
Yeah, I'll give you a link. There's the thing that I'm looking for right now is, and this goes into exactly what we've been talking about, is I have a survey that anyone can fill out, whether you have a family, whether you have kids, or whether you don't. I want to know, what are the things that kids need to be learning right now? Then, in your opinion, the things that kids need to be learning that they're not learning, and then what are the skills that kids need to learn in order to be safe, secure, and successful when they graduate from high school? So, like, when they graduate from school to life, like, what skills do they need? So I'll give you a link to it. It's a survey. It's
Send it to me.
that you
Yep.
can fill out, and that'll get you in contact with me. That'll get you on my list. I don't really use social media a lot, but you can find me if you search Stephen Warner. There's a lot of other Stephen Warners out there. Good luck
Find the
with
right
that.
one.
But there's Stephen, Stephen _ YFA is my Instagram. I can drop that if you want it to, but
Yep.
I don't like social. I'm not a huge social media guy. I'm not super into it. Probably the best way is honestly email. I know that's funny to say, but
No, but share your link. We'll drop that in the show notes, and
yeah.
I truly appreciate it. So this is the Unstoppable Leadership Spotlight podcast, and I thank listeners for joining in and listening to this. And if you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please go to my website, leaptoyoursuccess.com, and fill out the podcast application form. And I hope everybody has an amazing day, and thank you for being here and be unstoppable.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
The pleasure, such a pleasure.